first building that the church had after they incorporated. They didn't incorporate until 1850. They purchased a building for their home, and it cost $10,500. Over the door was, this time they called it the Disciples Meeting House. They changed their names a little bit from place to place. This was the designation that they were advised to call their church by Alexander Campbell. It's a few blocks from Union Square, and when you see it, it's a space today that would occupy only a small portion of a red brick contemporary office residential tower. The church was really growing quite slowly. They had 174 members by the time they got to 17th Street. But this time they called their first full-time regular pastor, Dr. Silas Shepard, who was a homeopathic physician who had previously served a similar church in Troy, New York. His involvement in the restoration of New Testament Christianity was well established, and it was here that perhaps one of the most historic, contributing historic pastors of this church served, Urban Brewer, a graduate of the young Union Theological Seminary, who was almost lost to the congregation in his history, but made tremendous accomplishments. His own, in 1863, announced a lecture on the biblical approach to slavery that was offered to the public. Now, if you know anything about New York in that period of time, New York was a very pro-slave community. As I said earlier, the business of New York was business, and it was good business to be cotton brokers for all of the South in New York City. So New York was not sympathetic to abolition. Urban Brewer gave a series of lectures on the nature of slavery in the Bible, concluding that slavery was an abomination. He was fearful of his job and offered to resign. He got a letter that month from the trustees of the church saying not only did they want him to stay, but they doubled his salary. And so the church was well on its way to becoming the progressive kind of community that historically is associated with the church. Interestingly enough, that lecture was lost, and we didn't have any record of it at the Park Avenue Church, and I don't know if you had any record of it over at Manhattan. Tom says they didn't have it over there. When I started doing research in Urban Brewer, I discovered that somebody, I don't know who, left a copy of that lecture to Cornell University. Oh. The trustees of Cornell University and the librarians there discovered it, and it's now been published, and you can buy it from Cornell. Oh. And the church, our church now has a copy of it. It's in booklet form, and it is in their series of significant contributions to the freedom of the slaves. Called the Primitive Church of the Disciples Meeting House, and it will be number 70 on your left. We are now at what's the number here? It'll be the next block further, just east of 6th Avenue, 6th Street near Broadway. When the building was purchased by James Everard, who converted it into the Turkish, Roman, and electric baths. By 1919, the history books report that it had become a gay, quote, resort, unquote. It was well known and still operating as the Turkish, Roman, and electric gay baths in 1977, when it was the scene of a devastating fire that claimed 9 lives. You'll see there when we get there, it now houses a rather less exotic enterprise, a 3-story Korean wholesale retail store. But you will be able to see a remnant of the building, and I'll tell you about it when we get there.